Hello, everybody. Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here, back with part 2 of my video game collection series, this time all about the Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, and the Sega CD. So this is part 2. Last time I talked about my Sega Master System games and half of my Sega Genesis games. I stopped, basically talked about 3 shelves worth of Genesis games, stopped there. Now I'm talking about my other 3 shelves of Genesis games. I have a lot. I cannot tell you right now because I do not have my phone nearby, which would tell me like the total of how many games I have in my collection, but I do have quite a bit. So when it comes to like the Sega Genesis, hey, what's up, Matt Wheaton? How's it going? Sega consoles, yes, sir. Everyone can hear me. Everything looks okay. Doing good. Doing all right. Just let me know. Oh, stupid camera changing light settings on me like that. I don't think I really talked about this in the first part of this Sega Genesis or the Sega series last week. Wasn't interested in the Sega Genesis at first at all when it first came out. I was just kind of like, I got my Nintendo, I'm good. Couple of friends I know, well, actually friends of friends had it, and I remember I watched one friend play Populous on the Genesis for a little while, and I was like, that looks kind of cool. But, yay. And then I had gotten a job in 2001 1991, at the local Kmart so I could buy a Super Nintendo. And it was the first console that I ever paid for with my own money. And because I did that, my brother was always kind of like, hey, Chris has a Super Nintendo now. I just have the Nintendo to play with. Can I have a Sega Genesis, Mom? Please? And of course, my little brother, they were like, yes, here you go. Asked for months and months and months, hey, can I get a Super Nintendo? No, you have a Nintendo, you're good. My brother says, hey, can I have a Sega Genesis? Here you go. So the thing was, like, he played it a little bit, and it was mostly because he was mad that I had this new toy. He wanted his own. But turned out my brother's not really into that, or into video games as much as I am. Not nearly as much. Not anymore at all. So I ended up playing it instead, and I grew to like it. I ended up, like, buying my own games for my brother's console and all that, and eventually he just kind of went like, you know what? You can have it. I want to say it's maybe within the first year of him getting it as a gift. He was like, you can have it. You play it more than I do. Whatever. So I grew to really love it. And, I was the one who was whining to my grandmother like, oh my god, I need a Sega CD so bad. And, of course, grandparents went out and bought me one, and then I dragged her around pretty much the entire state of Illinois looking for Sega CD games at every Funko land in the state, which was weird. But anyway, let's get into this now that, people are starting to show up. Welcome, everybody, to today's stream. So this is the second half of my Sega Genesis collection and my Sega CD collection. So let's get right into it. All right, so Midnight Resistance. I picked this up right after this year's Midwest Gaming Classic. I just bought Mercs, and I was like, oh, that Midnight Resistance game. I remember always wanting that back in the day. Never had it. I remember always seeing it at like Toys R Us and Funkoland. Never ended up getting around to buying it. It's a side-scrolling action run-gun type, kind of like Contra, a little bit slower. You have to collect all these keys and stuff. I don't remember exactly what they are for, but it's based on an arcade game. It's a lot slower than I remember the arcade game being, but it's pretty fun. Actually, this is a Data East game, and Sega bought the license to release it themselves on the Genesis. And I do remember this, I think this was also like a pretty early game. Yeah, 1991. Yeah, so this is a pretty early Genesis game. It still has that grid background on the back. So, it's okay. It's not the greatest thing ever. Was never a fan of this TV show because by the time it showed up, in America, I was way too old to be watching stuff like this, so it made absolutely I had no desire to watch it. I had no desire to play any of the games. Turns out some of the games are pretty good. That's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This is like a really, really easy... This is the one-on-one fighting game? I think it is. Yeah, this is the one-on-one fighting game. I keep on thinking of the the Super Nintendo game being that's the beat 'em up. This is the one-on-one fighting game. This one's okay. I think I picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic. No, I did not. I got this off of Facebook. A guy on Facebook sold this to me. It's okay. It's pretty cool. The one I got at the Midwest Gaming Classic like a couple of years back was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. And I do believe this one is a beat 'em up. Yes, this one is the beat 'em up. So, but it has one-on-one fighting levels, I think, when you're playing as a Zord. I get confused. I ended up having, for something that I had no interest in back in the day, I ended up buying more Power Rangers games now than I ever did back then. I never bought any of them back then, actually. Nowadays, I buy them all. I don't know why. Just weird that it worked out that way, but they're actually kind of fun. What's up, T-Belly? Sega CD coming up a little bit later, dude. Did you end up beating Punch-Out? I was watching this stream before. Jason does a delicious Sega yumminess. Here's a repro, and this is actually on the Sega Genesis Classic, the little clone console that got released not too long ago, like a few weeks back. Never came out over here. This is a Japanese exclusive. I wish we did because it's actually pretty fun, and that is Monster World 4. I picked this up off of the Cartridge Arcade on Etsy like years ago, like probably 4 years ago. And it's actually really fun. It's like a side-scrolling platformer / run-and-gun type game. There's no guns, but, sword play. So a little Castlevania-ish. And it's kind of, I think it had a little bit of RPG stuff going on in it as well. It's actually really, really fun. And like I said, the Cartridge Arcade, back when I was first getting into repros on the Genesis, I was pretty used to, the stuff I was getting was just cartridge only. And to see a Etsy shop that was doing the whole shebang by giving you like a case with a real looking slip with a full-on manual and a cartridge, and like this manual is actually like full color as well. Can't even open it up. Duh. I mean, that's pretty rad. I mean, I was so impressed with them. I just ended up buying like tons and tons of stuff from them that winter. But great game. Sad we never got it over here. It would have been pretty awesome. The title defenses were tough. Yep, Wonder Boy 3. Hell yeah. Alrighty then. Here we go. Yep. My favorites. Mortal Kombat 2, and Mortal Kombat 3. My favorite, obviously, is Mortal Kombat 2. I was so into Mortal Kombat back then that I knew that the Super Nintendo version and the Genesis version were obviously going to be the same game, but very different in different ways, as if, the Super Nintendo version was completely censored, all the blood was turned into sweat, the fatalities were censored, but the Genesis version was going to be censored as well unless you entered a code, which unlocked all the blood. Obviously, everybody knows this. Excuse me. But I ended up buying both games. I wanted the Super Nintendo one because it was closer looking to the arcade version, sounded like the arcade version, but this one, I knew the Genesis was very limited. It's basically just a little souped-up Nintendo. So yeah, the music kind of stank, the graphics were not that great, the play control was very loose, but you know what? This one had all the gore and the fatalities, so obviously had to have this one as well. Played it all the time, didn't bother me at all. That it didn't look and sound like the arcade, just like the Super Nintendo one did, even though the Super Nintendo one kind of sucked. Mortal Kombat 2, obviously, at this point, no one gave a crap anymore. Blood was in the game, fatalities were in the game, and it's great. I still prefer the Super Nintendo version, though. Not my favorite game in the series, Mortal Kombat 3. This one has the run feature, which I do not like, and, animalities and all this other kind of garbage they just kept throwing into the game to just complicate things even more. Didn't need to be, and I'm not really into this one. But got this from the Cartridge Arcade as well. Mortal Kombat 2 Unlimited. This is a hack of Mortal Kombat 2 on the Genesis to include, who is it that was extra in here? Smoke? Or is it, no, it's Noob Saibot. Noob Saibot, Shao Kahn, and Kintaro as playable characters. Who else is in here? There's actually more. Is that Rain? I think Rain is in here too. And, yeah. Oh, geez, I can't even see it. You can kind of see in the roster picture here. You got Kintaro, Liu Kang, Kung Lao. I think that's supposed to be Rain. Johnny Cage, Reptile, Shao Kahn, Sub-Zero, Shang Tsung, Jade. Jade's playable here now. Melina, Jax. I'm sorry, Kitana, Jax, Melina, Baraka, I think that's either Smoke or Noob Saibot. I cannot remember. Scorpion and Raiden. It's great. You wouldn't know that it's a hack. It plays just like the original version of the game. I wish there was a version of this for the Super Nintendo. I would be freaking getting a boner about that right now. It's a thick roster. Mystic Defender, side-scrolling platformer run and gun. It's like Alicia Dragoon Light. It's fun. I love it. I mean, it's a really, really good game. I enjoyed this one a lot. This was one of the games I had back in the day when my brother actually gave me my, his Genesis because he didn't want it anymore. This is one of the first games that I ran out and bought because I played it at Funko Land and I was like, yes, this game is awesome. Don't have any money because I work at freaking Kmart and I'm spending all my money on Super Nintendo games. But yeah, I ran out and bought this because I played this at Funko Land. I was like, I really don't care. I'll sell a couple games to buy this one. It was actually really fun. Picked this up with Captain Algebra when he came to visit last Christmas. NHLPA Hockey 93. I remember somebody telling me that this was the game for the Genesis that has the blood when you get into a fight. Like you get into a little fist fight, punch someone in the head, they hit the ice, and then you see like a little puddle of blood form around their head. They made fun of it in Mallrats, the movie. But I'm not a sports person. I don't like watching sports. I don't like playing sports games. But for some reason, video game hockey just does it for me. So I had to have that. I might get an NHL 94 as well if I can. I think they had 5 copies of it, complete in box at Video Games Then and Now. So I might go pick that up maybe next month. Here's a repro I got from... I cannot remember the name of There was the first Etsy shop I ever went to. And I got a repro, and I was like, "This is pretty awesome." I hope it's a version of the arcade game, which only got a port for one other console. Which at the point in time when I bought this, I was not collecting for Ninja Gaiden. I thought this would be a port of the arcade game. The only arcade game port we ever got was on the Atari Lynx, which I do own. This is kind of like the Ninja Gaiden that came out for the Game Gear. Actually, the Game Gear version is a port of this. It's Ninja Gaiden, but it's not any of the Ninja Gaiden games you ever played. It's more kind of like playing Shinobi, and it's not that great. I'm not really a fan of it. I was playing at Fan Brew Games. That was the name of the Etsy shop. I stopped going to them because all the cartridges they use are super cheap and look like if you were to just bend it a little bit, it would break. Every time I would buy a repro from them, the case would be completely different size, completely different style. Their artwork was very crappy looking. I mean, you can't really tell. It's really dark when you're actually looking at it. You can barely make out what's in the pictures. But the game itself, not all that great. So I stopped going to Fan Brew Games and started using that Cartridge Arcade Etsy shop. Picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic last year. No Escape? No, I did not. I got this off of eBay. I got the Super Nintendo version of this game at the Midwest Gaming Classic. No Escape's based off a movie that not a lot of people know. The guy that directed GoldenEye and Casino Royale. This was, I think, his first movie that he ever made. It had Ray Liotta in it and Ernie Hudson. It's like an island prison movie, and everyone's always trying to escape. There's a group of nomad crazy people that live on the island too. So there's the tribe of good people and the tribe of bad people, and they're always fighting. The game is a platform puzzler beat 'em up sort of. It's okay, but a reason I really wanted it was Psygnosis, and because I really enjoy the movie that this is based on. That opening shot where you see the military procession from that really strange high angle, and then out of nowhere Ray Liotta comes up and shoots the head officer. What do they call him? His superior officer, right in the head. It was really, really cool. But yeah, No Escape, not that bad. Picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic last year. Shopping for Ninja Gaiden PC Engine. Yes, so am I. So am I, T-Belly. I have not... I think the last time I bought a PC Engine game or a TurboGrafx 16 game was at the Midwest Gaming Classic back in April. Should probably change that. Actually, I was at a Half Price Books Tuesday. I went and saw Joker. Went to Half Price Books out in that area, and they had Bonk's Adventure and Bonk's Revenge complete at the store. Too bad I already had them, and they were overpriced, but I might have bought them for somebody if they weren't friggin' $60 each. Sold it to somebody or traded for something. Onslaught. What's up, Charlie? How's it going? Onslaught, I picked this up at the Midwest Gaming Classic last year, but not at the convention. I bought this at the Makes Sense Variety Store that's a good 5 miles away from the convention center. It's a... Oh, God, I can't explain it. It's kind of like wanting to be a Conan type game, but it's not that great. It's a platformer and kind of a beat 'em up at the same time. It's all right. It comes in one of those giant cartridges by Accolade. They always release them in these cardboard boxes and these giant cartridges. Star Control's one of those types of games. It's okay. I only paid, I think, $10 for it. So I was going to use this game in my Genesis Diamonds in the Rough video that came out a couple of weeks ago, and because I liked it when I played it back in the day. I had bought it back in the day because I thought it was a kind of a cool concept. And then when I was like, yeah, let me play that game again, I'm going to capture some footage for it, I'm going to reacquaint myself with the game so I can talk about it, and the more I played it, the more I was like, no, I'm not going to put this in my list. That's the Ooze. You play as a big blob of green poop, and you go around trying to make yourself bigger and bigger and bigger and not, lose mass. It's not that fun because it controls so weird nowadays, especially. Like back then I would probably been okay, but now I try to play it and I'm just like, what am I doing? It's not that great. J-Love! How's it going? Are you coming to MGC2, T-Belly? Awesome. Well, we're going to try to put together another panel, so if you and J-Love want in, let me know. I'll make things happen. So I got this from the Cartridge Arcade also. It's a repro of a Japanese Genesis game that I did not think the Genesis could ever in a million years do. When you play this game, it will blow your freaking mind. It's called Panoramic Cotton. I think this is based off of an anime. It's by Sunsoft. It is Star Fox on the Genesis, but instead of being in a spaceship, you are a witch riding a broom. You heard it right. It is fantastic. It's like Space Harrier almost. But it works really, really well. It is fantastic. If you want a really different type of Genesis game, something you don't normally see, this is the one for you. I am so glad that I picked this up, and this was one of those ones that came complete. It may be a repro, but you wouldn't know it by looking at it. It's fantastic. I was so glad I picked that one up. Threefer. Got Phantasy Star 2, Phantasy Star 3, Generations of Doom, and Phantasy Star 4. I have not put any time into any of these yet. I mean, I used to play Phantasy Star 2 all the time back in the day, but I haven't done it yet because I was waiting until I could get Phantasy Star 1 for the Master System, picked that up 2 years ago, so that was 2017 at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and I never played it, so I need to remedy that. The only problem with the Phantasy Star 2 that I have is it does not come with that 110-page hint book that they would stuff underneath the plastic slip here. I can probably pick that up somewhere else. But I hear Phantasy Star 4 is fantastic, and I hear that Phantasy Star 3 is not so fantastic. Here's a game that I was going to put on my list of Genesis Diamonds in the Rough, but then I went back and I was like, you know what, I should probably watch those Genesis Hidden Gems videos on Metal Jesus' channel so I don't have a whole lot of overlap, because I knew that a couple that I picked I remembered seeing in his video and going like, that is a pretty good Diamond in the Rough. But he put this on his list and I said no. Philios, it is a fantastic shmup. It is a vertically scrolling shmup where you play as basically Perseus on a Pegasus, and you're shooting, mythological creatures out of the sky. It is pretty cool. You got Medusa. You're playing as Apollo, though. I said it's Perseus, but it reminds me a little bit of Clash of the Titans. You got Artemis in here. 7 levels of monster-infested worlds. It's actually really, really cool, and a neat take on a shmup. Lightning Rod of Hate. This is probably the second best version of this game. It's a port of an arcade game that is crap, but I enjoyed it because I sank a lot of quarters into it, and back in the day. This is before Mortal Kombat. Pit Fighter. This is the pre-Mortal Kombat digitized actors and a fighting game. The only problem is the fighting doesn't really work because instead of it being on one plane, it's kind of like a beat 'em up where you can move all the way around the level. But the AI is freaking tough. You can barely get in a hit sometimes because it's so cheap. So it's not the greatest game ever, but I enjoyed it because, like I said, nostalgia for the arcade game. The best version of that game, strangely enough, is for the Atari Lynx. Go figure. Ooh. So you'll have to excuse me. Starting on Saturday night and then all the way through mid-Tuesday, I had a really bad cold, so I'm still kind of suffering the after effects. So I'm going to be sucking on some cough drops while I'm doing this today. Exclusive for the Genesis. We never got a port of this to the Super Nintendo or any other platform except maybe the Game Gear. Predator 2. This is made by, what is it, Probe? Same people that made Alien 3 for the Genesis, which is one of my favorite games for the Genesis. This is an isometric action shoot 'em up. It looks kind of like a dungeon crawler almost, but it's not. You play as Danny Glover's character from the movie. I think it was Harrigan. Harrigan? No. I cannot remember. Yeah, Lieutenant Harrigan. Memory. And you're going around shooting gangbangers and Jamaican drug lords and all this kind of stuff while running away from the Predator's little laser beam targeting system that follows you around, because if it hits you, you will explode and like your body parts actually fly toward the screen and kind of fall back to Earth. And you go through all the locations that are in the movie, like the slaughterhouse and the Predator ship from the end of the movie and all that, and then eventually take on the Predator and kick his ass. It's actually a pretty fun game. The music's not what you would expect from a Predator game. It's a little too upbeat, but it's actually really fun. I've loved this game ever since it first came out. It was one of the games that I kept on telling people, you need to try this game out. It's really good. But everyone's like, it's a game based on Predator. It's a licensed game. It's going to be dupe. It's going to be poo-poo. Let's see. I thought that was a Jack Daniels bottle at first. Oh, no, this is a little bit of the iced tea. Do you have Steel Empire? You might see it coming up later on. I can neither confirm nor deny that it is in this stack right here. Wink! Really good port of Prince of Persia. There's one for the Super Nintendo, I also think, and one for the Nintendo. And I remember this one having like the most impressive animation. Like, Prince of Persia was always known for the animation. I always thought this one was better than all the other ones for some reason. And it was pretty fun. I got this really cheap at a local store that closed a while back. It made me sad, actually. What was it called? CD Recyclery or something like that? I can't remember. It was in Skokie by where I work. But it closed down and I was really sad. I went there one last time and the guy was like, just want to let you know we're not accepting any like trade-ins, from now on. I was like, oh, I guess they have way too much to deal with right now and they're not going to put anything else on the shelves. No, it's because they were getting ready to close. They didn't want to give out any money. But Prince of Persia is a really fun one. Okay. That Fan Brew Games Etsy shop that I was complaining about, the one that I got Ninja Gaiden from, this is when I said F you right in the A when this showed up. I bought this because it's weird, and I don't know why someone thought this was a good idea, but it's actually not that bad of a game. Pringles the game. The potato chips has a video game. What? Hey, if McDonald's can have video games, why not Pringles? I wanted to buy this because, yeah, it's weird. But when it showed up, I'm like, why is this box twice the thickness, like the case, twice the thickness of a standard, Genesis case? Like, here's Prince of Persia. Okay, you see how thick that is, and you put this next to it, and it's like almost, 1.5 times the thickness, and it sticks out so far on the shelf, it's ugly as F. But the game itself, I'm going to do a review of this at some point, but it's like playing Cool Spot. But you play as the little Pringles symbol, the little face, and you bounce around collecting potato chips, I think. Yeah, you're collecting potato chips. And it's okay. It's a simple game. I think this is a homebrew. I could be wrong. I don't know, maybe it's a hack of something else. It's actually not too bad, but it's kind of fun. I enjoyed it when I was playing it, but like I said, everything about that Fan Brew Games was cheap. I had to buy the manual for this through the Cartridge Arcade, because the other Etsy shop, the one that I ended up liking more, because they offered manuals separately. You can get just the cart. You can get the cart and the box if you want. You can just get the box. You can just get the manual. You can get all three at once. It was really cool the way they did things, and I was really appreciative of that. Pugsy, this is a side-scrolling platformer. It's okay. Sometimes it's a little too fast for its own good. You play as... I cannot tell what the hell this guy is supposed to be. But I wanted it because Psygnosis, so that's why I bought it. It's kind of like a little cutesy wannabe mascot for the Genesis. It's not too bad. Here's the other game I bought at the same time that I bought Pringles. That's Pulseman. This is a Japanese exclusive that or maybe a PAL also, I'm not sure, but I know this was Japan. Exclusive for the Genesis over there, and, I had to get the manual from Cartridge Arcade because they were not selling it at Fan Brew, but It's actually pretty cool. It's a side-scrolling platformer. Reminds me a little bit of playing like Rocket Knight Adventures. It's pretty awesome. There's this electricity thing that's going on because, you are, Pulse Man. He's about the electricity. He's got the little flash symbol in his name. Highly recommended. Quackshot starring Donald Duck. All the Genesis games based on Disney properties are pretty damn good, except for Fantasia. I will never own that game in my life. If I ever had a goal, I will not have a goal to get like all the Disney games ever made. The one I will not buy is Fantasia. That goal will never be fulfilled. It will never be completed. But here's another side-scrolling action platformer. Just a Donald Duck. It's actually pretty cool. Music is super catchy on that one. And you want to talk about music? Holy shit! I talked about. What was it? Subterranea in my Diamonds in the Rough video a couple weeks back. And that game has fantastic music. This one also, I bought them at the exact same time. Subterranea and Red Zone, I bought these the exact same time off of Amazon, I think. This game is fantastic. It is a top-down run and gun type of game. It's kind of like if you were to take... It has sections of the game that are like playing Desert Strike. And the rest of it is like a top-down action game, kind of like playing Loaded that came out for the PS1. And you combine the two, and it is really fun. A lot of really cool graphical touches, because there's actually like an opening cinematic with like footage, like real, like it's a string of pictures that they link together, but they do it so well it looks like you're watching like a video file on a Genesis game. It was really impressive, and the music is fantastic, and the game is really fun too. I would have put this. It's by the creators of Subterranea, also, just so you know. That's why I brought up Subterranea beforehand. Yeah, my brain. And I was going to put this in my Diamonds in the Rough, but I think Metal Jesus also talked about this one, so I left it off, because I didn't want to look like I was just copying his list, which I did not want to do. Android Assault for the Sega CD Neo Genesis? I might as well. You'll have to wait and see. Wink. CD Exchange? No. I can't remember the name of it. It had... I want to say like media. I can't remember. Chips. I want some chips. I should tell you guys the chip story. Once you poppy can't ever stop. My brother was shooting his. My brother made a feature film back in 2009 in Chicago, and I was an investor. I gave him like $2,500 to help him make it. I was a producer on it. I actually did some of the makeup effects for it. I did this. It was about a Desert Storm war vet who has like PTSD, and he's coming back home and all that, and he has to deal with all the crap back home. And like one of the flashbacks is one of his bunkmates like shot himself in the chin with his gun and blew the top of his head off, and I did this squirting blood effect that just come out the back of his head that actually looked pretty cool. But there was a scene that they shot at Union Station downtown, and they had set up a craft services table for all the actors and everybody. They were going to, like, anyone who wanted to be an extra, could come over here and get some chips, cookies, some brownies, some juice. And, like, a homeless guy came up to the table, and my brother's girlfriend was working the table. And he's just kind of, like, looking over everything, he was sucking his teeth. He's going, like, while he's looking over all the stuff. And my brother's girlfriend, she's like, would you like something? I can, want some juice? You want a cookie or something? He just kind of looks at her and goes, I want some chips. And with just the way he said it, made her laugh in his face almost. And she just kind of gave him the chips, and she's like, okay, now you can go now. And, like, it became like an ongoing joke. I mean, we still talk about it at work. Like, everyone will be like, walk up to you and go like, come up to your desk. I want some chips. Anyway, back to the games. Ranger X, talked about this in my Diamonds in the Rough for the Genesis video from a few weeks back. Fantastic game. It's plays a robot. I'll do like go watch the video if you want the full description. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Plays a robot. You have a sled that you can attach yourself to that powers you up. And it's like a side-scrolling Contra-style run and gun with gigantic bosses, and it is really fun. I love it. Ren and Stimpy present Stimpy's Invention. Probably the best Ren and Stimpy game I think ever came out. There was like Vidiots and a couple of other games that came out, I think, for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. This is the only one that feels like a game. The other ones are just kind of like thrown together. I remember I felt like they were been thrown together because they were just so random. This one is like a game, and it's actually pretty cool. It's like it has like scenes from classic episodes in it, like the wrestling episode. You got Powdered Toast Man, grab my buttocks, that kind of stuff. And it's really fun. It looks like the cartoon, which is probably the best thing. The presentation is the best part about it, so I like it. Got an absolute classic. This was the first game I bought for the Genesis when my brother got it. Because I was like, if there was one game I was ever going to get, it was going to be this, because I was a huge fan of the arcade game, and that's Revenge of Shinobi. Classic game. Music by Yuzo Koshiro, which is still fantastic, still holds up. I had the soundtrack on vinyl, for crying out loud. But you know how awesome this is. Side-scrolling ninja action game. I do not remember if this is the version that has Godzilla and Spider-Man and Batman in it or not. I'll have to play. I might actually have to play this tonight when I'm done. But the version I found still has the poster in it. But why it's a poster of Golden Axe, I do not know. I might just put this in my Golden Axe box. I think somebody must have just thrown this in here for shits and giggles. But, yeah, Revenge of Shinobi, classic game. Road Rash 2. The first game I never played, I played this one. I rented this from the local video store, and I loved it. It's a motorcycle racing game where you kind of race into the screen, kind of like Rad Racer, but on a motorcycle. Mach Rider-esque, I guess. But you can beat the crap out of people that you're racing against. You have like a chain or a bat, and you can just like swing it against the people, knock them off their bikes. It has a co-op mode or a versus mode, 2 players simultaneous, which is awesome. Fantastic game. This is one of those EA games. Obviously their cartridges are gigantic, but for some reason the manual is super thin. This is not one of their RPGs that Electronic Arts released, but still, it's in this gigantic, thick-ass case. What the hell? Takes up more space on my shelf than I should, or it should. Classic game, RoboCop vs. Terminator. There's one for the Super Nintendo as well, and I think there was one that came out for the NES in, overseas in the UK. There's a version of this for the Game Gear, and I think the Game Boy. But this one's my favorite. Don't get me wrong, I love the Super Nintendo version. It's slightly different. This one is gory as all hell. You shoot somebody in the stomach, and the person you shoot, their head pops off. And this like geyser of blood comes shooting out. Their body just disintegrates, and their head just flies off. It is nasty, but it's fantastic. You play as RoboCop. You start off just fighting gang members and Ed 209, but you end up taking out, the Terminator and going into the future and fighting, was it T-800s or whatever, all over the place. It's really cool. Love it. Welcome back, T-Belly. Rocket Knight Adventures, classic Konami game. This one is a platformer, but you can shoot around the screen because of your rocket pack. It's actually part of the mechanics of the game is that you have to do that a lot. But this was an exclusive for the Genesis. No one else got this. Not the Super Nintendo, not any handhelds that I know of. There was a sequel to this called Sparkster that came out for both the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. I don't have either. I would like to, even though I hear it's not nearly as good as this one. But the thing is, I bought this because when I was getting back into collecting, and I was watching all these, these YouTubers. I was watching, Gamester81, Metal Jesus, Ed T180, whatever the hell his number was. Who else? Pete Dorr. Everyone kept talking about how awesome this game was, and I never played it back in the day. Terminator. I fucking hate Terminator. Yeah, you hate that. You hate it so much. You keep sending me pictures of it. So when I bought it, I think my expectations were too high. So when I finally got around to playing it, I was like, this isn't as good as everyone's making it out to be. Not to say it's bad, it's just not nearly as awesome as everyone makes it sound. But it is a good game. I enjoy it. Got these two at the Midwest Gaming Classic this year. It was not something I went out to buy this year. It was the games that these are 2 games that I had on my list of things I was looking for at the Midwest Gaming Classic back in 2018. And I couldn't find it that year. I found one. I will say I found one way too expensive. And I was like, nope, that's not happening. But found these both at Midwest Gaming Classic this year, and they were both decently priced. So I was like, well, I wasn't planning on picking them up this year, but might as well get them now. That is Rolling Thunder 2 and 3. The original game was an arcade game, came out for, I think, the NES only. It also had a clone that came out for the NES called, Codename Viper? Almost the exact same game. I'm surprised that they did not get sued by Namco. Part 2 is almost the exact same game as the original, just with better graphics and everything. Part 3 is where it's at, though. Part 3 changes everything up. Different characters to pick from. Lots of different weapons. You can actually pick what weapons you want to use, and it's awesome. There's like vehicle levels and stuff like that. It is fantastic. I play this one a lot, but it's like a side-scrolling arcadey shooter. But you have this like door mechanic where you can hide in these doors that you walk past from the enemies. Some doors you'll go into will be like an armory, and you can get better weapons and stuff like that. It's really, really fun. I loved playing the arcade game. It was one of the arcade games they had at that craptastic resort my parents used to take me and my brother to when I was a little kid in Michigan that we absolutely hated. But the only thing that was good about that place was they had a little arcade with Altered Beast, Arch Rivals, and Rolling Thunder. That was it. That was the only thing I liked about it. I just sprayed iced tea across my face. Damn it! Talked about this in the the September pickups video from last Monday. It's a repro. It's actually a hack of Streets of Rage 2. It's Scott Pilgrim versus Streets of Rage 2. There's like hundreds of these Streets of Rage 2 hacks where people are putting other games into Streets of Rage 2, like The Simpsons, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Resident Evil characters, characters from Marvel vs. Capcom, all this kind of crazy shit. Mega Man. The only one I was really interested in is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, because it's Scott Pilgrim characters from the Scott Pilgrim beat-em-up game that came out for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 in Streets of Rage. And it's awesome. You can play as Scott Pilgrim, Ramona Flowers, Steven, and Kim, who is the singer and the drummer for Scott's band. Was it Sex Bomb? It's really cool. I like it a lot. That's the only one of those I will get, ever. Shadow Dancer, Secret of Shinobi. I got this at last year's 2018's Midwest Gaming Classic. I was looking for Shinobi 3 and couldn't find it for a good price, but there was a guy that had this for like $15, so I said, why not? This is, I think, Shinobi 4, I think. This is the one where you have the dog. It plays just like every other Shinobi game, but you have a dog that you can, like, sick on people, which is a pretty cool idea. One of these because Psygnosis. We got Shadow of the Beast and Shadow of the Beast 2. I think Shadow of the Beast 2 also has a Sega CD version, which I'll probably end up getting because Psygnosis. I bought Shadow of the Beast back in the day. I'd never played part 2 prior to buying it now, when I got this like a year ago or whatever it was. I bought Shadow of the Beast at Funkoland because I've been reading about it and I know it was a really popular Amiga game. And I was like, okay, well, there has to be something to this game that makes everyone love it so much, so I will buy it unplayed, sight unseen. I went to Funkoland. There was a used copy of it there. My friend Sonny, who ran this one particular Funkoland, held it for me. Went and picked it up, brought it home, and I was like, what the hell am I doing in this damn game? Like, it is so vague. It's a puzzle platformer, but it's just not that well made. I mean, for a computer game, I guess it would have been okay, but like by the time this finally made it to the Genesis, there were way better games out there of that type. So it was like too little, too late, I want to say. Not to say it's not great. I mean, it's not bad. It's just not that good. I was very disappointed in it. 13 furious levels of arcade action? No, it's 13 furious labels of furious frustration. That's what it was. And part 2 is a little bit better, but not by much. No, there's that cough. It came back. Okay. I have a story about this one. We got Shadowrun on the Genesis. So, I'm a huge Cyberpunk fan. Absolutely love Shadowrun. Love the Super Nintendo game. Absolutely loved it. That came out before this did. Came out like a year before, I want to say. And then eventually, FASA had a game made for the Genesis. And naturally, I ran out and bought it. Like day one. My friend Charlie, who wasn't here, Epic Die Studio, I don't know if he's still here. Are you still here, Charlie? We're talking shit about you. We were both into Shadowrun. We liked it so much we made a Shadowrun fan film back in like 1994, which is god-awful, and I will never, ever talk of it again. So, got super excited that a Genesis game was coming out, went out and picked this up day one. Brought it home, played it for about a half an hour. Yeah, there you go. I knew you were still here. Played this for about a half an hour, and I was like, the fuck is this? Because it was absolutely nothing like the Super Nintendo version. I know I shouldn't have expected it. It's not the same game. It's not a port. It's its own beast. So I was like, I don't want it anymore. I don't like it. So I went over to Charlie's place because I think we're going to go see a movie that night. And I was like, you want it? Because I don't. I'll sell it to you for $10 off. And he was like, yeah, I'll take it. And he ended up liking this, I think, more. I don't know. Did you like this one more than the Super Nintendo version? But I kind of realized that I hadn't given it a fair shake. I only played it for like a half an hour, for crying out loud, before I like judged it. And then I started seeing the kind of stuff you could do in it. And like I remember coming to his place a couple of times after I sold to him, and I was watching him play, and I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. Because the cyberspace, the Matrix scenes in the game are freaking awesome, especially when compared to what's in the Super Nintendo version. The one in the Super Nintendo version is like playing Minesweeper. In this, it's like this third-person, video game surfing thing. It's pretty awesome, and it's just I didn't like the top-down view. I didn't like the way you controlled. I didn't like the way you were moving around so damn fast. But I need to give it more of a chance to play it and figure it out, which is what I didn't do. And that's why I wanted to get it again, because I want to give it that fair shake. And I still haven't played it. I mean, I played it to make sure it worked when I first got it, but I really need to put some time into it. You prefer the Genesis? I remember that, because you're like saying that the Matrix scenes were way better. Oh! You people are going to love this one. I know it. You're going to love it. You're going to be like, Chris, sell me that game right now, because it is such a hot commodity. How come you've been hiding this game from us for so long? You don't talk about it in any of your videos, you son of a bitch. It's Shaq Fu. I'll put it right over here. Shining in the Darkness. Much better game than Shaq Fu. Actually, like Shaq Fu, the Genesis version, I'm not a big fan of. I bought it because I like the developer, Delphine. They made Flashback, The Quest for Identity. The animation's great, the music's great, the gameplay is what sucks. The Super Nintendo one's actually not that bad. It's a fighting game also, but it's more well made. Still not great, but it's better than the Genesis one. I still don't know why it's in my collection though. Woo! My throat. Daddy needs another cough drop. But anyway, Shining in the Darkness. Is this supposed to be related to Shining Force? I can't remember. But it's like a dungeon crawl RPG where it's like Wizardry, where you're actually seeing from, like, the first person view. You going through the tunnels and all that. You can kind of see it. Pretty cool, actually. I remember watching, Charlie and my friend Brian playing this back in the day, and I actually thought it looked pretty rad. So I wanted it, and I got it. And I got it really cheap. I got it right before the price jacked up, like 5 years ago, I want to say. I got it off Amazon for like $25, and the next thing you know, it's like going for $60. I was like, woo! Got lucky with that one. I need to adjust. I think I got this at this year's Midwest Gaming Classic, Shinobi 3. Finally picked up a copy of this. I had this back in the day, absolutely loved it, because this one took Shinobi to the next level. Because characters are bigger, big, huge bosses that cover the screen, different play types. You got, like, vehicle stuff. There's one part where you're, like, riding on, like, a rocket-powered surfboard. You're, like, skipping across the water. You can actually see it up here. But everyone talks about Revenge of Shinobi. I like 3 the best. It is so much fun. You can ride horseback in this one, too. It's nuts. Got Sonic Spinball. No big whoop. Sonic Pinball. Everyone seems to bitch about it endlessly. I really enjoy it. Not gonna... Wow. My throat is going nuts. It's all the talking. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about these because we got Sonic the Hedgehog. Not for resale, people. We got Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Not for resale, people. Sonic 3. And Sonic and Knuckles, which is basically DLC in a cartridge. Because this one opens up on the top, and you can put, I think it's part 2 and 3 in this slot on top of the cartridge, and it adds Knuckles into Sonic 2 and Sonic 3. Pretty cool idea. I remember we had... It's its own game on its own, but you can add Knuckles. It's like an in-betweener device that just kind of like hacks the cartridges legally. Oh, boy. My throat. I remember when I was working at the video store back in the 90s, mid-90s, and that came out, That confused the hell out of every single person that rented it. They're like, why does the cartridge look so weird? Why does it open up? Is it broken? What's going on? I'm like, no. You can put other games on the top of it, and you can put the characters from this game in that game. And I would try to explain to them, and they'd just be like, their eyes would be crossing, and they'd be like, I don't get it. I'm like, never mind. We're going to play the game or not? Spider-Man, got this at this year's Midwest Gaming Classic. Thinking that this was like the Genesis version of the Spider-Man game that came out for the Sega CD. It's not. Turns out the Sega CD version is a sequel to this. And that plays way better because this game is poo-poo. I only paid like $10 for it, so I was not sad, but I was not a fan. It's like a side-scrolling platformer, action, sort of beat 'em up. It plays so bad, and I just do not like the way the controls work at all. Splatterhouse 3. Picked this up pretty early on in my collecting when I started back in 2013. Got this off of a friend on Facebook. Didn't come with a manual though. I'm still looking for one. This game is so freaking expensive, but the thing was he gave me a deal on it, and that's why I bought it. I want to say he gave me maybe $40 off what everyone else was charging for it because I begged him and pleaded him. I was like, look, I had this game back when it first came out. It was one of my favorites. Please sell it to me. Please. And he was like, okay. So I was thankful for that. Turns out I was lying because Splatterhouse 2 is actually the one that I really, really like. Part 3 is good. It's more of like there's more exploration involved in it because you can go in all these different... It's not like a linear game. It's not like you're just constantly progressing. This one, you actually had a choice of which rooms you wanted to go in. And it was like Resident Evil-esque where you can just explore the whole mansion and destroy every creature that came at you in all these different rooms. So there was some choice involved. But I do like the linear version, the original game and the second game. The second game is probably my favorite in the series. We got the original version of Star Control. Had this back in the day. It's not really like a game. It's just kind of like skirmishes. As far as I remember, there's no story mode, and if there was, I could never figure out how to get it to work. It just says furious space combat plus engaging 3D strategy. Yeah, engage in 15 explosive space battle scenarios and play to 5 megabits of interstellar sound effects and music. Oh my god, sold American. It's basically just spaceship fights. There's no plot. It's just, here's all these different spaceships. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Some are overpowered, some are underpowered, but they're fast. Shoot everything, blow them up, game over. The second game, though, the one that came out on the 3DO, was the one where the plot kicked in, and it was the most epic, sprawling video game I'd ever played at that point, and it's still one of my favorite games of all time, and I will talk about that one when I get to the 3DO games. This one's okay. Don't expect much from it, though. Anticipating the Sega CD. It's coming. I got one stack left of Genesis games. Starflight. This is another one of those games by Electronic Arts that has a freaking novel for a manual. Jesus. Oh, boy. This one is kind of like the Buck Rogers game that I showed off in the last video for the Genesis. It's an RPG. This one is not by FASA, but it's like there's spaceship stuff involved. You can see there's actually spaceship combat, which is just like Star Control, which I just showed off. It plays just like it. It looks just like it. Some of the ships look just like they're out of that game, too. I'm surprised there was not a lawsuit. But there's exploration, RPG stuff. It's really cool. It's complicated as all hell, which is why that book is that thick. Star Trek The Next Generation, Echoes from the Past. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Have to have this one. This also came out at the exact same time as the Super Nintendo version, but that had a different name. That was called Future Echoes. This one's Echoes from the Past. It's the same game, but it's different at the same time. There's some stuff that is shared between the two games, but there's also scenarios that take advantage of what the Super Nintendo can do and some that take advantage of what the Genesis does good. Like there's 3D stuff in the Super Nintendo one. This one has, I think, the better combat when you're fighting another alien ship, like the Romulans or the Klingons or whatever. It plays better here than it does on the Super Nintendo one, but the graphics and the music and everything else look way better on the Super Nintendo one, which is my favorite version of this game. But I wanted to have it because I bought this one before I bought the Super Nintendo one. I actually want both because one of my goals is get all the Star Trek video games that came out for consoles, so why not? Didn't somebody ask about this? Let me check this chat here. I never could figure out Star Control on the 3D. Man, I beat that game at least 30 times. Let me see here. Somebody asked me about this in the chat. Yeah, what is it? Nintendo 1985. If you're still here, yeah, I bought Steel Empire. You damn right I did. Almost talked about this in my Diamonds in the Rough video for the Genesis, but I think Metal Jesus talked about this one also, so I left it out. This is a steampunk shmup. It's a side-scrolling shmup. It's really, really cool. There's, like, crazy Zeppelin shit going on. It is really crazy. The amount of stuff on screen is also kind of nuts. It doesn't look like a Genesis game to me. It doesn't play like one either. This felt more like a Super Nintendo game. But it was by Flying Edge, which is actually LJN, and I think became part of Acclaim at some point. So everyone was like, don't want that, it's gonna be crap. No, it's actually kind of awesome, and everybody missed out. Gonna just bundle these three together. We got Streets of Rage 3, Streets of Rage 2, and Streets of Rage 2, and Streets of Rage 3. My favorite is probably Part 2, even though I like the music in Part 1 better. Part 3, not so much of anything, except the progression of the powers that your characters have in Part 3 is really cool, but I hate the music, and I don't like a lot of the characters that you can play as. But Part 1 still has my favorite music out of them all. Part 2 has my favorite graphics and gameplay out of them all. So 1 and 2 are where it's at. 3, not so much. But classic beat-em-ups. Everybody knows Streets of Rage. Part 4 is coming out pretty soon. Can't wait. I've still got a freaking boner over that one. Took them long enough, too. Frickin' Sega! Just talked about this in the September pickups that came out a couple weeks ago. Strider. Classic arcade port. It's really fun. Side-scrolling beat-em-up. But instead of using your fist, you use this giant sword that takes up half the frickin' screen. Only thing I've noticed while playing this now, and I know it was happening back in the day too, was a lot of sound effects get dropped while you're playing this game. You'll be like cutting something open and the sound effects just cut out on you. It's weird. But it's a fun game. I like it a lot. Way better than that shitty Nintendo game. Subterranea, talked about this in the Diamonds in the Rough for the Sega Genesis. This is, if you were to take, like I said, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want you to not have to watch my Diamonds in the Rough video, because I highly recommend you do, because I put a lot of work into it. It's like if you were to take Solar Jetman for the NES and combine it with Sinistar. And it's really fun. Here is the dumbed down version of Sunset Riders. This also came out on the Super Nintendo, but that Super Nintendo version has the 4-player co-op. This only has 2-player co-op because Sega Genesis can't do what Nintendo can. But it is a port of an arcade game where you play as like these cowboys and bandoleros or whatever the hell I can't remember what they were called. Simon Greedwell, Paco Loco, and Chief Scalpin. That's racist. As F. Whatever. But yeah, it's like Contra in the Wild West. And I think sometimes you shoot into the background as well. Most of the time it's side-scrolling. I like this game a lot. It is a lot of fun. This was the budget version of the Super Nintendo one, because the Super Nintendo one is the one everybody wants. Cost a lot. Still does. Way over $150 as far as I remember. I got this for like $50, so I wasn't going to complain. Everyone likes this version of Superman on the Genesis. I do not. It is super hard. It is a side-scrolling platformer with some flying stuff. And you got some of Superman's powers that you can utilize, like the heat vision and all that. I still can't beat the first level. Don't ask me why. It's just hard as balls, and the controls are kind of shitty. Talk about this in the September pickup video. I did the Indiegogo to get a copy of this. It's a port of an Amiga game. Got a sequel that's on the Lynx, which I own. And I wanted to play this because I liked the one for the Lynx, so I want to play what the original game was, and it's Switchblade. I need another drink. My throat is going nuts. Woo! Okay, so not great. It's from Pico Interactive, P-I-K-O, not P-I-C-O. They buy unfinished games for the retro consoles that were never released, or ones that were only released in like one country, like something that was released only in China for the Genesis. I know there's a beat 'em up that has Barbarian in the title. Cannot remember the name of it. That was only released in China. They did a localization of it and brought it out over here. So they did a port of the Amiga game to the Genesis, and it's not all that great. It's a platformer. There's some beat 'em up aspects to it. There's some shoot 'em up aspects to it. But it does not scroll. It's like you beat a screen moves over to the next one. And then you have that screen you're looking at until you can get out of that one. And it's just really jarring, and I do not like the way it is set up. But I do need to put some more time into it. I only played it for about 40 minutes. I bought this because everyone was telling me how gory it was, and then the moment I told people that I bought it, they're like, why'd you buy it? It's a piece of shit. Make up your goddamn mind! Sword of Sodan. Another game by Electronic Arts. And Electronic Arts was like one of those companies that, at least back when these games were coming out for the Genesis, like in the early 90s, their motto was basically, don't give a fuck. They put blood in everything. I was talking about the Immortal in my Diamonds in the Rough video and last week's collection video. On the back of the box, they show someone getting beheaded. But it's a beat 'em up. And from what I understand, yes, it's gory. Yes, it's shocking. But the gameplay is doo-doo. And I think it's okay, but a lot of people are just like, that is like the worst game ever made. Why'd you buy it? I'm like, why were you telling me that it was the goriest thing ever and that I'd probably enjoy it? Hypocrites. Target Earth. This is a side-scrolling run and gun. I guess you play as a mech, and you're blowing up other mechs. And it got a remake on the PlayStation 4. I cannot remember what it is called. I have it. Oh, Assault Suit Lanos, which is, I think, what this game is originally called overseas. Over here, it's called Target Earth. It's actually really fun. I like this one a lot. I bought that because of Assault Suit Lanos being so awesome. I was like, of course I gotta have the original version. Why not? We got Tasmania and Taz and Escape from Mars. You like the Looney Tunes, you're gonna like these games. And Taz is probably my favorite character from Tiny Toons, so had to have those. Here's another one of those freaking massive games from Electronic Arts. This is Techno Clash. It's an RPG that is also very cyberpunk, which is why I wanted it, because cyberpunk is my jam. Does not have a freaking novel-sized instruction manual. Wished it did, though, because when I tried to play it, I was like, wow, it is just throwing you into the mix and not letting you know anything you need to in order to get things to work. So, yeah, you really need to study that manual before you play this one. So it's like an RPG, top-down, but there's a lot of technological things going on compared to your standard. It's kind of like if you were to take Phantasy Star, I guess, mixed with Phantasy Star mixed with Shadowrun. That's Techno Clash. It's pretty cool, though. I mean, I will admit, I was playing it for a while, and it took me forever to figure out what the hell I was supposed to be doing. But once I did... Jason! You hate this game, right? Totally. I know you do. No, he doesn't. He loves this shit. Terminator is probably one of the best games on the Genesis, especially when it comes to a licensed game. This one got it right. The music is great. The graphics are great. It follows the plot of the movie exactly. It plays really, really well, and it's fun as hell. So you start off playing as Reese in the future world, after the war. Get sent to the past. You play through that stupid nightclub. You're playing through the streets. You're shooting down thugs for some reason with a shotgun that for some reason you just keep repeatedly pulling out of your trench coat. It's funny to see when you're just constantly opening your trench coat and pulling the shotgun out and shooting people. It makes me laugh. And then you end up taking out the Terminator in the... it wasn't a warehouse. It was like a molding company or whatever it was. Where you had those industrial presses and all that, where you end up killing the Terminator. It's a really short game. There's only like 4 levels in it, but it is fantastic, and it still holds up, I think. It's one of the best Terminator games ever. Thunder Force 2. I have Thunder Force 4, which is actually renamed Lightning Force for some reason. Don't ask me why. Thunder Force 2 it's a shmup. It's a horizontally scrolling shmup, which is pretty cool. It's kind of basic, because this is a early Genesis game. But it also has these top-down, vertical... Well, it's not really a vertically scrolling. It doesn't scroll. It's these top-down levels where you're looking down on your ship, and you can go anywhere. And you're just trying to shoot down all these other ships in your way. And I think you're destroying these generators that make a barrier that keep you out of the area that you need to do a horizontal scrolling level in. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Whatever. But you can see it right here. I remember enjoying it. It's fun. Part 3 is way better in every way. Trying to get a copy of that. Told Captain Algebra that that's the game he's supposed to remind me that I need to buy at next year's Midwest Gaming Classic. You love Sunset Riders. What about the Terminator? Anyway, I digress. Todd's Adventures in Slime World. Talked about this in my Genesis Diamonds in the Rough from a few weeks back. First time I played this was on the Lynx. Absolutely loved it. Of all the games I had on my Lynx back in the the late 80s, early 90s, whatever it was, I think it was the early 90s is when I got it. This game I played the most. And then when I saw that there was a Genesis port of it, I said, hells to the yes, I want to play this on my TV. And it's great. I think it's a fantastic platformer exploration game. There's some shooting elements to it, but you have a squirt gun instead of like a gun. But I think it's a fantastic game, and everybody should have this in their collection. The name is dumb, but the game is great. Toe Jam and Earl, Panic on Funkatron. This is part 2 of Toe Jam and Earl. Third one came out on the the Xbox, and the fourth one just came out on I think it was the PS4 and the Switch for a limited run, but I think it was a download-only game. It was a digital game. Whatever. This one is not that top-down isometric view that the original game was. This one's just a side-scrolling platformer. It's pretty fun. It's just very tonally different. This is like what Legend of Zelda became Legend of Zelda 2. Went from like a top-down adventure, action-adventure game to a side-scrolling RPG. This one is like totally different from what the first one was and confused a lot of people, and I know a lot of people hated it because of that. They wanted more of what the first one was. I don't. I like to play different types of games. Still can't believe this was a thing back in the 90s. Toxic Crusaders. There's a video game based on a cartoon based on a movie by Troma. Troma makes like smut. It's like softcore porn with extreme violence, and they are glorious. But for some reason, Lloyd Kaufman, the guy who runs Troma, thought that the Toxic Avenger movies would make for a great children entertainment. Let's make that into a cartoon series, which got turned into video games for pretty much every kind of console out there. I know there's an NES one, there's one for the Game Boy. Why was this a good idea? But the game's actually kind of fun. It's a beat-em-up where you play as Toxic Avenger. And for some reason, you've got this little tennis ball thing. I think it's supposed to be a tumor that follows you around and talks shit. It's really entertaining. Don't know why this was a thing, though. I'm still baffled by it. If you've ever watched a Toxic Avenger movie, tell me if there's anything you see, remotely anything in that movie, that looks like a child would find it entertaining. Or something that you would think would make for a Saturday morning cartoon. There's nothing. I'm going to save you the effort. Okay, this one requires a little bit of setup. Got this off of my pal, Toysaurus Games. He makes repros. He used to make repros for the Dreamcast. He switched over to the Genesis and Genesis only now. I saw him put a picture of this up on Instagram, and I said, absolutely need it. Absolutely need it right now. It's based on one of my favorite movies ever. Have to have it. It's awesome looking. Give it to me. And he sold it to me for a discount because it requires a little bit of weird... There's a little weird thing going on with it. It's called Tron Now. I talked about this in a pickup video when I first got it. So the thing is, for starters, it comes in this clear blue cartridge that is filled with LEDs. So when you plug this into your Genesis and you power it on, this thing lights up, and it lights up bright. And because it's got the translucent blue cartridge, it shoots blue light all over my living room, and it is awesome. It is glorious. Only thing was, it doesn't really run right when you're only playing it as a Genesis game. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's code. Well, the game itself is basically just light cycles. Just like in the arcade game. Only thing is, there's code built into the cartridge that's always looking to see if there is a Sega CD hooked up to your Genesis. Because it comes with a Sega CD, not game, it's a music disc. Because the game streams music off the disc. And the music on this disc is from Tron Legacy. So you're playing a Genesis game with Sega CD music pumping through it. That is bizarre. So if you want to play the game alone without this music, the game is not going to work right because it's going to be constantly looking for a Sega CD and it can't find it and it crashes the game. So you have to be playing with a Sega CD, which I do have a Sega CDX, you know, that little thing that looks like a Discman with a Genesis attached to the back of it, or Genesis slot attached to the back of it. So it plays great when you're doing it like that, but if you don't have the disc, you really can't play the game. So it's a weird situation, but it's worth it. This is a lot of fun. And it's Tron, and Tron is fantastic. We got Truxton, the game that Mark from Classic Game Room talks about endlessly, and his endless talking about it made me want to get it, because he made me, like, every time he would talk about it, I'd be like, I kind of always wanted Truxton. Thanks for reminding me, Mark, that I need to be buying that. And then I'd forget about it, and then I'd watch another episode of it, and he'd be talking about a completely unrelated game that's not even remotely a shmup, and then he'd remember that he has a Truxton coin-op behind him in the video, and he'd be like, and by the way, Truxton! And I'd be like, oh yeah, I need to pick up Truxton when I get a chance. And then I'd forget about it, watch another video, Truxton! Finally, I caved in and bought it. It's a vertically scrolling shmup, and it's probably one of the best ones on the Genesis. It is really fun. It's tough as balls, like, you know, all these early Genesis games were, but it's really, really fun. I mean, it's old school. It's not really bullet hell-esque at all. It's just challenging because, you know, old school games were like that. This is a repro. I got this off of someone on Facebook, and I think he was just because he was selling repros that he had. It's called Twinkletale. This came out, I think, in Japan and in the UK. It is like it's like playing Pocky and Rocky. It's like you're on foot running around in these top-down levels, and you're shooting shit like in Pocky and Rocky. So it's like a shmup almost. It's weird. You play as a witch. You're shooting magic spells, shit out your hands and whatnot. It's really, really fun, and it's really freaking hard, but it's a lot of fun. I wished we got this over here in the U.S. because it's a fantastic game. Power Metal Gamer! Oh my god! Welcome, welcome, dude. Been a long time. Your pickup video, I watched it today. It was fantastic. You got a lot of rad shit. Gotta love Die Hard Trilogy and Alien Trilogy. They are great games for the PS1. Die Hard Trilogy 2, I'm warning you, not that great. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. The enhanced version of Mortal Kombat 3 because I think it was taking them forever to finish Mortal Kombat 4, so they just re-released Mortal Kombat 3 into the arcades with more characters in it and more crap that we didn't need. Not a fan of Mortal Kombat 3. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 did things better because they put Scorpion back into it, and Scorpion was my favorite character back then in this game, in Mortal Kombat 2. So him being omitted from this cheesed me off to no end, but when they put him back in for Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, I was okay with it, even though still hate the combo system, still hate the running, all that shit. But, yeah, this is the better version, but it's still like a shit taco instead of just being shit. Here's another repro I got from Cartridge Arcade. This one has a really cool, clear cartridge. I got this from Toys R Us. What am I talking about? The ones I have that don't have a manual in it are the ones I got from Toys R Us. Undeadline. This is a... What is this one? Is this the other one? This one is just like Twinkletale. Yeah, it's like a shmup, but you're walking around on foot. And it's like a top-down game. Really, really cool. I just remember the music. I remember I played this for about a good 10 minutes because I bought like 5 games from him at once. And which one was it? I think it was the... Which one was it that I was playing all the time that I... Shit! I cannot remember. It's been a while. I played this one for about a good 5 minutes just to see if it worked. And it worked on my Retro Freak, so I was happy about that. But this one is fantastic, too. I need to put more time into it. Literally just replied to your comment there. Awesome! Someone reads my comments! Yay! Okay, I'm doing a video about this game on its own because it's a weird situation. Universal Soldier on the Genesis. It says Universal Soldier on the box, but the game is Turrican. It's just been reskinned with Universal Soldier stuff, but it's Turrican. And that's all I'm going to say. Video coming soon. We got Vector Man, which I think is on the Genesis Classic also. It's a side-scrolling game, but your character's made out of like balls that aren't really connected in any way, and you can stretch out your limbs and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. It's like a run and gun. Here's another game I got from Toy R Us Games on Instagram. This one is in a weird gray cartridge. It's weird. Every cartridge I get from that guy looks completely different, which is kind of awesome at the same time. Vixen 357. This is an RPG where you play as a giant mech, and it's kind of like reminds me a little bit of like a 16-bit Xenosaga. Wiz and Liz, another game I bought because Psygnosis. This is a co-op platformer, and it's actually kind of fun. It's really cutesy, but my problem with a lot of the games that Psygnosis made that were like this, like Pugsley, and there's a couple others from the last video, for some reason in their games, their characters run, or when they walk, they move so fast that it's kind of hard to play. It's kind of like the Ocean games, how every game that they ever made, the characters slip and slide all over the place like they're walking on ice. The characters in Psygnosis' games tend to walk really, really fast, and it makes it hard to control. This is the last game that I got from Fanbrew Games, that Etsy shop that I swore off, because this shit looks so cheap. I was like, you are not getting any more of my goddamn money. So I bought a port of Wolfenstein 3D for the Genesis. And the funny thing is, it's Wolfenstein 3D on the Genesis, and it works. You saw the Duke Nukem one that I showed off last time, and it's nothing like Duke Nukem. It's like a generic, flavorless first-person shooter. All the rooms look the same. The walls are bland as hell. It's crap. It just has the Duke Nukem license slapped on it. This one is Wolfenstein 3D, and it plays really, really well. I do not know if this was a game that was released in other countries and was ported over here, as a repro, or if this was a homebrew and somebody was like, I dare you to put Wolfenstein 3D on a Genesis cartridge, and some guy said challenge accepted, and here we go. But it plays really well for a Genesis version of this, and I was surprised. But they gave it to me in this freaking massive-ass box that pisses me off. There's no manual. The cartridge looks like absolute ass. Yeah, I was like, yep, Fanbrew, you're done. Lots of Genesis boxes are No. I think they only started using cardboard like at the tail end of the Genesis's lifespan because they were just trying to get cheap. Everything was plastic, like these. Like, the ones that you had in your video today. And then, I want to say within the last year, everything started to becoming cardboard because they were just getting cheap and all that. And everyone, whenever they'd reprint a game through, what was that company that was doing all the reprints? I know Castlevania Bloodlines was one of them. I cannot remember the name of the company, but every time they would reprint a game, it would come out with a cardboard box. So we got World of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. This is the sequel to Castle of Illusion. Puts Donald Duck into the mix with Mickey. And it's actually really fun. Plays almost exactly the same. Pretty cool. Got another twofer right here. Got X-Men. Not so great. X-Men 2 Clone Wars. Awesome. Side-scrolling platform beat-em-up type games. This game is not that fun. I remember my brother and I rented this, and it's not as bad as the NES X-Men game from LJN, but we were not impressed, and we brought it back the same night that we rented it. And I was really leery about Part 2 when that came out, because this was one of those cardboard ones, because this came out later on. We were leery about it, but I started reading things about it that people were saying that it was pretty awesome. And the cool thing about this, I think the thing that impresses me the most about this is, when you boot the game up, there's no intro screen. The game just starts, and every time you start, you play as a different character. It's like random which character you start the game as, and it's like a Danger Room scenario, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's a lot of fun, plays way better than the first one, lots of cool scenarios and characters that you remember from the comic books and the cartoon. I love it. It's fantastic. Talked about this in the Diamonds in the Rough video that came out a couple weeks ago for the Genesis, and that's Zero Tolerance. I was like, if you're going to get a first-person shooter, and trust me, there are none, except for the ones that came out 2 decades later. Excuse me. Get this one, because it's the only one available right now, and it's really good. It's a first-person shooter. You're on a space station, and there's raiders, I do believe, that are on board I think they're just trying to kill everybody. You got to kill them first. It's really fun. I like it a lot. And the last game I have for the Genesis is a really not so great port of Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Don't get me wrong, it's good. I like the Super Nintendo one more, and I still need to get it so I can get rid of this one. Top-down Legend of Zelda type view of a game, but you're playing as a couple of kids that are in the middle of a zombie invasion, and actually it's more than zombies. There's zombies, there's giant babies, there's Chucky dolls running around with chainsaws or knives or whatever the hell they are. A bunch of horror movie scenarios. And your weapons are squirt guns and soda can grenades and stuff like that. But it's really fun. The music is super catchy. The gameplay is really, really tight. I like it a lot. I just wished I had my Super Nintendo one back. I had the Super Nintendo one back in the day, and I loved it. But I got this because it was cheap. No, I got this because it was free. I was talking in the last video how my brother's friend was moving from California back to Illinois, and he wanted to sell some stuff. My brother saw that he had a box of like Genesis stuff, asked him, or said to him, my brother collects video games. Would you be willing to sell this to him? My brother, he called me and said, he has this box of games. He wants to sell them to you. I said, how many did he have? He's like, there's probably 20. I'm like, tell him I'll give him $20 for it. And he took it. So essentially, okay, this wasn't free. This cost me 50 cents. How about that? So I took it. Yeah, the Super Nintendo version of Zombies is so much more. Yeah, Zero Tolerance is fun. I love it. Okay, so like I said, that is it for the Genesis game. So now T-Belly, here comes the Sega CD stuff. But first, a little intermission while I pop a cough drop so I don't hock a loogie over my camera. Maybe a little drinky drink. Okay. Sega CD, and I got a decent amount. We got Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Eye of the Beholder. I do own this for the Super Nintendo as well. At least I think I still do. Yes, I do. I wanted this one because the graphics, yes, it's a Sega CD game, which means it's a Genesis game with better music. The graphics have been downgraded, but the gameplay is actually better on this version. And the music is by Yuzo Koshiro, the guy who did the music for Streets of Rage and Revenge of Shinobi and all those awesome games. So I said, yes, the Super Nintendo one looks better. This one actually plays and sounds better. But it's a dungeon crawl game, first person, going through dungeons. You have 4 characters in your party, magic users, warriors, thieves, healers, that kind of thing. It's pretty cool. The Adventures of Batman and Robin. I thought that this was... so this one's actually kind of expensive normally. I found someone slipping on eBay, and I got this for like $30. And I was like, oh my god! I have I thought this was a port of the Genesis game. Just with better music and maybe some cutscenes or something that are like video. Turns out, no, this is a completely different game. It has nothing to do with the Genesis one. Because this one is all about driving the Batmobile. But the good thing about it is it has an entirely original episode of Batman, the animated series, made specifically for this game, and you're playing through the storyline. The only thing is, every time that Batman needs to go out and do something, it's always him driving somewhere to do it, and taking out enemy cars and, Poison Ivy's vines that are on the streets and shit like that. You end up playing or racing across a chessboard. It's really bizarre. It's fun. It's not what I wanted in a Batman and Robin game on the Sega CD, but, it's pretty cool in its own right, because I really like the other game in the series that's coming up pretty soon. So I was talking about Spider-Man for the Genesis and how I did not like it. I thought it was the original port of the Sega CD game right here that I have. Turns out this is actually the sequel to that game. The Genesis game I'm not a fan of. The Sega CD game is awesome, though. It's basically all the same gameplay and graphics from that Genesis game, enhanced in all the right ways. Plus, it has CD quality music and cutscenes that are animated. The music is by Spencer Nielsen. You're going to hear that name a lot when I'm talking about the Sega CD, because he was like the in-house composer for, I think, Sega of America. And whenever a game from Japan was being localized over here for the Sega CD for us, he was the guy that would recompose the music. And his stuff was usually pretty good. It was a little more rock influenced than anything else. He always had to sing in at least one song on each game. He had to sing. The song he sings in this, I think it's called Hang Time. Oh my god, it's like embarrassingly bad. But every other track on this game is fantastic. Someone also in this chat asked me if I had this game. Let me see. Neo Genesis asked me a while back, do you have Android Assault? Why, yes I do. What do you mean the 32X? What about it? So yeah, Android Assault is a shmup, a horizontally scrolling shmup where you play as this giant robot, and you're blasting other robots and robot ships out of the sky. It's really fun. The music is fantastic. The graphics are cool. I prefer the graphics from another game that is of a similar type that's coming up later. But the music is rad in this. I got this for a steal. There's a guy that I was buying games, mostly Super Nintendo and Nintendo games. I was buying games from him on Facebook. And then I realized that I was basically getting gypped because I started really paying attention to what games were going for on the regular, like an average price. And he was always upcharging me by about 10%. So I stopped buying from him. And then one day out of nowhere, he sends me a message on Facebook. He's like, look, dude, I'm really in desperate need for some money. I'm selling some stuff. Is there anything here that you're interested in? And I said, oh, that Android Assault looks pretty cool. How much are you asking for that? And he goes, I'll give it to you for $30. I'm like, well, not only is that a pretty good price for this, because I know how much this was normally going for, and this was going for at least $80 at the time. When it showed up, I found out why he was only charging me that much. There's no manual. It just has the front page. Some of my bitch. But for the price I paid, I was okay with it. But it's a really fun game. I highly recommend that one. This is the Batman game I was talking about when I was like, I like Adventures of Batman and Robin because I like this one so much, and that is Batman Returns. It's a port of the Genesis game, which is awful. I know Power Metal Gamer just added that one to his collection in that video he showed off today. That Genesis game is horrible as far as I'm concerned. But what makes this game great is they made a whole bunch of exclusive for the Sega CD racing levels where you're playing in the Batmobile, you're racing into the screen. They're really fun. Spencer Nilsson did the music. He recomposed the music from the Genesis game and did all the stuff for the racing levels as well. And the music is fantastic in this game. Really, really good. The graphics in the racing levels are great. And they're fun. And you can actually, in the options menu, pick to just do the racing levels and not have to play any of that side-scrolling crap from the Genesis version. Really, really good game. I love this one a lot. This is one of the earliest Sega CD games because they came in these really fragile cardboard boxes, and the games just came in a CD jewel case, which suck. But whatever. They don't make game protectors like I have for like my Super Nintendo and Nintendo games for something this small, which kind of sucks. But this is my favorite Batman game on the Sega. Oh, the Batman on the Batman Returns on the Genesis? Yeah, it's poo. It is poo! Kind of like this one. I always wanted to play Battle Core when it first came out for the Sega CD, and I never had a chance of buying it, so naturally when I'm an adult and suddenly I've got money to spend, I'll get that game because I can. And I was like, I should have just left it on that auction on eBay because it's not that great. It's a tank game, and it's inside from view of the inside of the tank. You're looking at the view screen, and the thing is, everything is colored the same. Like, the environment is the same color as some of the enemies you're fighting. I could not figure out what I was supposed to be shooting to save my life. It's kind of frustrating to play. Hard as balls, so it's okay. But be prepared to want to shoot somebody in the face. It might be better now that I have the Retro Tink, which is my upscaler for all my old consoles. So it might be easier to like figure out what is shootable compared to what's part of the environment. Because when I was playing it just with the yellow, red, and white cables, like I never remember if it's composite or component, I couldn't figure it out to save my life. By core design, yeah. Those are the people that ended up making, what was it, the first Tomb Raider? Cobra Command, this is another one of those early Sega CD games that came in the cardboard box. This is a full-motion video game. It's kind of like playing Dragon's Lair, but you're in a helicopter. And it's really cool. It's like basically watching an anime that's interactive. I like it a lot. There was a lot of these types of games on the Sega CD. One of them I had back in the day. I loved it. I don't own it. I really should probably look for it at this year's Midwest, or this next year's Midwest Gaming Classic. That's Time Gal. I used to play that one a lot. It's kind of pricey, though. RGB cables, yeah. Bram Stoker's Dracula. I wanted this because this was developed by Psygnosis. Out of all the games that are based on Dracula, or the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie, this was probably the worst, as far as I'm concerned at least. because they decided we're going to do the Mortal Kombat thing. We're going to use a real actor and digitize them and put them in the game. It'll be fantastic. Everyone's going to be like, the graphics in this game are great. Oh my god. Yeah, well, you need gameplay to go along with that, and this game controls like doo-doo. Yeah, it has like cutscenes from the movie, but they're in a window about this big, and they're so low res you really can't see what's going on. And the game controls like ass. It's like you play as Jonathan Harker, and it's kind of like a platformer beat 'em up. It doesn't work. It's not good. But it's by Psygnosis, so I had to have it. Had it back in the day. It was one of those games where, like, if you found a Sega CD game, like, not at a specific, like, if you weren't going to, like, a software store, you weren't going to, like, an EB Games or Software Etc. or whatever back then, I found that one at a grocery store chain called Omni. They had, like, a tiny little electronics section, and they had, like, 3 Sega CD games behind the counter. And I was like, what? They have Sega CD games here? Dracula's an awesome movie. Give me that game. And then I brought it home, and I was like, yeah, I made a mistake. Because I did the exact same thing with this one. I got this at Omni also back in the day. Cliffhanger, based on the Stallone movie. It's a beat 'em up. It also had there was a Genesis game. There was a Super Nintendo game. There's a really horrible NES game. This is a port of the Genesis game, but because Sega CD can do new things like scaling and stuff like that, we're going to put in these snowboarding levels where you're kind of going into the screen, and they control like shit. They are long, hard, unfair, and ruin the game. But the soundtrack from the movie is in here, and there's cutscenes as well. Like, basically, you get to watch the first 10 minutes of the movie. Or not the first 10 minutes, it's the heist with the airplanes. You get to watch that whole scene, like 10 minutes of it, as the opening cutscene for the game, which is kind of cool, because back then, when I bought this, the movie hadn't even come out on video yet, as far as I remember. So I kept on watching it, going like, that scene is pretty awesome. I like that. I can watch it on my Sega CD, even though it looks like poop. And it looks like someone colorized Night of the Living Dead. But the beat-em-up stuff is okay. It's really simple and kind of generic, but those snowboarding levels are just nightmarish. How many Sega CD games? Less than 200, I think. Not that many. It lasted longer than I thought it would, but it didn't do nearly as well as everyone thought it would, I think. I had this game back in the day. Thought it was pretty cool. Never really played a strategy game before. This was like one of the first strategy games I think I ever played and actually enjoyed. And then like XCOM later on got me really into it. Dark Wizard. Found this at Gen Con 4 years ago, maybe. I can't remember. It was like the second to the last time I went. I found this in the auction consignment store, which was random as hell. I'm like, why is a really awesome Sega CD... I can't talk. Why is a really awesome Sega CD game sitting here in this good condition at Gen Con of all freaking places? It's a board game convention. But it's a really awesome strategy game. You basically have all your characters moving around like an overworld. When you want to take somebody's space, you have a little fight. And I think it's predetermined, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you don't control any of that stuff. But there's animated scenes, and there's voice acting and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. It still holds up, I think. Everyone bitched about the Sega CD back in the day because every game that comes out for that thing is a full-motion video game. Yeah, because, like I said, everyone wanted to take advantage of the CD format, so let's make it an interactive movie like Double Switch. I have this for the PS4 also. That's a better version of the game, let's be honest. Out of all the full motion video games I had, like back in the day, like Sewer Shark and this and Night Trap and all them, I think this one was probably my least favorite. Yeah, it has Corey Haim and Debbie Harry in it and Arlie Ermy, but yay, I didn't really care. It was just like, this was like Night Trap Part 2. It played almost exactly the same. You just have to memorize where you need to be at any given time to do certain things to the bad guys that are roaming around this loft or whatever in this giant hotel. It's okay. I prefer the Sega CD or the PlayStation 4 version over this one, but it's still not the best full motion video game. My favorite one is coming up. Here's another one, full motion video game. It's Dracula Unleashed. I never had this one back in the day. Didn't realize that there was a Dracula game that was like a full motion video game, because a full motion horror game? Awesome. It's okay. It's kind of like playing the Sherlock Holmes game that came out for the Sega CD, because I think you're mostly playing as a detective. The first interactive gothic horror movie. But yeah, there's like wolves and vampire chicks and stuff like that. You can see there's one right there. It's okay. It comes on like, what is it, 2 discs? Yeah. 2 discs. It's okay. Not my favorite of the full motion videos either. Here's a funny one. There's Dune. This is a port of the... Oh, you can see how much I paid for it. $20 whole dollars. I think this is a port of the Genesis game, but I think that was actually Dune 2, wasn't it? Then this isn't. I don't know. I never played that. The thing was, I bought this game on the Sega CD back in the day. The same day that I bought it was the same day that I decided I wanted a 3DO. And everyone's heard that story if you've watched a couple of my videos from back in the day when I was talking about what I had to do to get my 3DO, which was basically sell my Genesis, my Sega CD, all my games for my Genesis, all my games for my Sega CD, and still throw in $100 to get a 3DO because that sucker was $700. So I basically bought this game, and then the same day, didn't even open it, was like, I want a 3DO. What do you want for it? And the guy was like, well, what do you got? And I told him what I had. I'll go, we'll buy all your Genesis stuff if you want, your Sega CD stuff. So I basically handed this over to them unopened. So I basically got what I paid for it. Never played it, though. Never even got a chance to play it. Like I said, never even opened it. But it's a strategy game. There's a lot of like conversation trees and stuff like that. There's stuff from the movie. There's characters from the movie. Like you can see Paul Atreides and the princess up here from the movie. It's okay. It's kind of vague at times where you need to go and what you need to do in certain areas and all that. There's a little bit of point and click action going on too. But it follows the plot of the movie. Okay, it's more based on the book than anything. But it's kind of cool. It's like it uses stuff from the, like the visuals from the movie, but follows the plot of the book more. The port of Echo the Dolphin and Echo 2 The Tides of Time. It's the exact same games as the Genesis ones, just with CG cutscenes and brand new music composed by Spencer Nielsen. You can see how much I paid for this. I paid $4.99 for this. This used to be a Blockbuster rental, but it's actually in really, really good shape, which means that nobody, and it even comes with the phone, nobody actually rented this because it looks like it is brand new. But not that big of a fan of the Genesis era Echo games. I like the one for the Dreamcast a lot more, but they're okay. It's mostly worth it for the music because the music in these games is fantastic. The best fighting game on the Sega CD is Eternal Champions: Challenge from the Dark Side. I thought this was a remake of Eternal Champions for the Genesis. Turns out this is the sequel. There were supposed to be 3 games in this series. But the Sega CD did so badly, and this game did not sell so well, that they just ended the series with this one. I was hoping that there would have been one for the Saturn, but that never happened. But everything that was wrong with the Genesis version was fixed in here. The speed, because I remember the game being super slow, that was my main concern, and the controls were not responsive. Speed was upped, controls made a lot better, more characters, fatalities were easier to pull off, lots of secrets to hide, secret characters to unlock, CGI cutscenes, awesome music, everything about it just worked. It was like, okay, here we are. We finally got a really cool original game for a console like this. I also had Brutal, Paws of Vengeance or Paws of Fury or whatever it was for the Sega CD back in the day, and that did not hold a candle to this. This is the fighting game I played, except for another one that's in this stack over here that I'll get to a little bit later. Great game. I love this one a lot. This is the second Eternal Champions. Was I sleeping under a rock? Dude, this game is awesome. There's a character in it named the Senator. It needs to be seen to be believed. It is fantastic. Here's my favorite full-motion video game for the Sega CD, and I want a remaster of this for the PlayStation 4, just like Night Trap and Double Switch got. That's Ground Zero, Texas. Because this one does not require memorization. Night Trap and Double Switch required memorization because the game was the same every time you played it. It was like, at this time you need to be in this room, at this time you need to be in this room so you can trap all these bad guys. This one was just like reacting. You had like a little... there was cameras set up in certain areas of the town, and whenever something was happening in that area, the camera would flash on this little map that you had, and you would go there, you'd watch a little bit of a cutscene where people would be explaining to you what's going on, and then you would have a shooting gallery scene that was full motion video. Characters would be popping up, you shoot them, they die. And you just keep on doing that over and over again. It was repetitive, yes, but it was the most straightforward out of these full motion video games by Digital Pictures. So I enjoyed this one the most because it was easy to play, and I did not need to write things down like time codes and shit like that. Here's Heimdall. It's an isometric action game. I think it says point and click interface, but I don't remember that at all. But it's a RPG-esque. It's like a light. I guess it's an action RPG if you want to call it that. I bought this in California when I went to visit my brother a few years back. Got it at Game Dude, which if you are in California, in the LA area, go to Game Dude if you're a collector. That place is amazing. It melted my brain, the amount of games that were in that store, and the prices were pretty reasonable. I picked this up because it was I think one of 2 or 3 Sega CD games they actually had that I don't see. So I was like, that, I don't see that. I want that. And it was really cheap. I think I got this for $10. Excuse me. It's okay. I played it for maybe a grand total of 20 minutes when I first got it to see if it worked, and I haven't played it since. I should probably change that. Iron Helix. It's another full motion video game, but this was kind of trying to be a first person shooter, and it's kind of crappy. But yeah, you want to watch some craptastic acting in a game, this is the one for you. Yeah, if you thought the acting in Disruptor for the PlayStation 1 was bad, play Iron Helix. You have not seen anything until you've played that game. Jurassic Park, John Riggs talked about this in the Good Licensed Games video collaboration that I did a couple years ago. This was his choice. This one isn't really like any of the other games. This one's actually just like an exploration game. You walk through the visitor center. You go and see where the dinosaurs are hatched. You might run into a T-Rex or a couple of raptors, and it's okay. It's like a point and click game almost. It's okay. What's up? What is it? Mish Kebab? I love that name. You gonna emulate that later? Dude, it's fantastic. But welcome to the stream, Mish Kebab. Jurassic Park, not my favorite not my favorite game based on this license to come out. My favorite is probably still, I want to say, the Genesis one. Even though that one's not even all that great. Okay, so I bitched about this one in the bad licensed game collaboration that I did. That's Lawnmower Man. Lawnmower Man for the Sega CD, or not Sega CD, the Super Nintendo was probably one of my favorite licensed games of all time. So I always wanted the Sega CD version because I was like, what will that game be like on a Sega CD? Will it be the Genesis version with cutscenes from the movie in there and maybe some extra cool music or something like that? No, it's its own game. It has nothing to do with any of the other versions, but it's basically just a bunch of really crappy mini games that are vague as hell. You can't figure out what the hell's going on half the time. The instruction manual is no help. It was basically we can do all these cool things with CGI for this game. What we're going to do with them, we still don't know, but we can do them. So let's just throw it together and make a game and make some money. And it's not fun at all. There's cutscenes from the movie in there mixed in there. There's some CGI stuff made specifically for the game. There's a shot of a lawnmower turning into Job. It's like a morph. It's really bad. I picked that up at People Play Games before they closed, a year before they closed, and I thought I was yes, I found a new favorite game, and I was like, no, this is not even close. No. There's another full motion video game, Lodestar: The Legend of Tully Bodine. It has Ned Beatty in it. Otis from Superman. It's gotta be good. Honestly, I could not even tell you what this game is about because I bought it and I still have not played it. I bought this years ago and I still have not played it. I think it's an on-rails shooter. I think it is. Yes, I think it is. It looks craptastic, but I got it for $5, so I'm not going to complain. Jurassic Park Rampage Edition. That's the one I'm thinking about. The remake for the Genesis. That's my favorite game based on the first movie. But you want to talk about an on-rails shooter, Microcosm. I had this back in the day, and all my friends hated it. I thought it was fun as hell. I loved the music, and I loved the whole idea. It's fantastic voyage in a video game. You're injected, you get shrunk down to the size of a cell, and injected into this guy who's dying to save his life. I think he was a businessman, and he's making some big deal that's going to change the world, and you need to save him before he croaks. And it turns out there's another guy that's inside of him, kind of inner space, and you have to have a fight. I'm starting to wheeze. Woo! It's really fun. It's an on-rail shooter, and you're inside somebody's body, so there's lots of really gross things you're flying through. And I find it extremely fun. The music is fantastic. Pick this up at Half Price Books, of all places. Did not think I would ever find any Sega CD anything at Half Price Books, but I found the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game. Basically, it's like, what, how many episodes? 9 episodes of the hit television series. They've been strung together and turned into QuickTime events. So it's like playing Dragon's Lair with live-action Power Ranger footage playing behind it. Yeah, like I said when I was talking about the Power Ranger games for the Genesis, and when I was still talking about my Genesis games, not into Power Rangers at all back in the day. I was way too old when that stuff started playing, when it came on the air. But as an adult, I ended up buying all the games because why not? I don't know. Because I can. I'm a grown-ass man. This one's awesome. This is my other favorite fighting game for the Genesis. It is the port of Mortal Kombat. But you might be looking at it like, why has it got writing on the front, Chris? What is that shit? This is signed by Johnny Frickin' Cage, Daniel Pesina. I talked about it in that 4-part pickup video that I did about a year ago. So... People Play Games, which was my retro game store in the city that I used to go to all the time, was closing down, and I knew the guy that not ran it, but the guy who was like the lead clerk that ran the up front area, and he decided he was going to give me like, I think everything was 10% off in the store, but when he saw me walk in, he's like, you come here all the time. You get 25% off because you're awesome. I'm like, thank you. So they were also doing a raffle. And they're going to be doing one. The Friday that I went was when he told me about the raffle. They're going to be doing one that Friday night, and they're going to be doing one on Saturday night. I bought so much stuff. I think it was for like every $10 you spent, you got a raffle ticket. I spent so much money there on Friday. I had like this stack of tickets that I could not go to the raffle that night. So I bought all this stuff, came home, went back that night, and participated in the raffle. Only one other guy showed up. The guy who showed up had one ticket in his hand, because I think he had just bought something and was told about the raffle and was like, oh, hey. I walk in and I've got this mess of tickets. Like, we're talking like 30 tickets. And the guy looks at me and he goes, oh, yeah, he's going to win. So the clerk looks at me and he goes, you want to be a nice guy today? He's like, we were nice to you. And I go, yeah, of course. And he goes, why don't you guys just split the prize? Because, you know, it's obviously not going to be very fair. You've got like 500 tickets in your hand. This guy's got one. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. So the prize was $50 in store credit. We split it 25. I was looking for something to spend it on, and I saw this in their case of like things that they don't want people touching and walking out with. This was like one of their specialty items, was this signed edition of Mortal Kombat on the Sega CD. And I was like, I want that. And I think I ended up having to pay like $10 out of my pocket for it. And the clerk looked at me because he knew I was a Mortal Kombat fan, because the same night I had bought this there. I bought this that afternoon at the store when I went. And he looked at me when I said I want that. He looks at me and goes, I'm so glad you're buying this. I'm like, yes, so am I. Even though at that point in time I was not happy with Mr. Pesina. I was still mad at him. Check out older videos for that. But this is just a port of the Genesis game. It has better music. There's a music video at the front that plays one of the songs off of the Immortals album, and it's not the one you think of. It's not the one that we all know from Mortal Kombat the movies. It's one of the crappy ones on that album. It's another remix of the theme. I'm not a fan. But yeah, it's just the port of the Genesis game, just with better music and slightly better graphics. We got Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure. It's just a port of the Genesis version of the game with better better sound, better sound effects and music. It's the exact same game, but this is like a 16-bit platformer. It's okay. I think I still like the original Pitfall better than this. But I found that at Half Price Books as well, which is why I bought it. Here's another one of those cartoon full motion video games like Time Gal. It's Revenge of the Ninja. It's an animated movie that you are doing QuickTime events to. It's actually kind of cool. I had this one back in the day, and it's pretty fun. This was probably my favorite game at the beginning when I got my Sega CD, and that's Rise of the Dragon, because this is cyberpunk as fuck. And I love cyberpunk. You play as this detective guy, if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since I played this. Yeah, this is the year 2053, the city Los Angeles. Amid the foul air and dark, dangerous streets, a dragon rises from the ashes of legend. Many fear him, many fall before him. Only one will risk all to destroy him, and that one is you, Blade, Hunter, Private Investigator. Yeah, it's awesome. There's like point and click stuff, which is really cool and not confusing. There's a couple of point and click games that I've been playing at the same time that I was like, what? There's also side-scrolling levels, which is great, and they're fun, and they're not confusing. It's just a really all-around fun game, and the story is fantastic, and it's also kind of gory. So, I like that one a lot. But, I was talking about Android Assault being like a great shmup. This is the one I like more, because this is the one that I dragged my grandmother halfway across Illinois to buy from a Funko Land. Because it was the only store that had it in Illinois. Robo Alesta. I think this is part of Musha is a game in this series, the Alesta series or whatever. But it's steampunk as fuck. You basically are playing as a steampunk robot that flies, and you're taking out other steampunky things like zeppelins and stuff, but it's like during feudal Japan era. And it's weird, but you know what? The freaking music in this game is awesome. The gameplay is fantastic. I absolutely love this. This was one of the few shmups I loved back in the day, and I was not a fan of shmups back then. But I played this all the time. This was like the game that made the Sega CD for me. No joke. So when I got back into collecting, one of the first things I said was, need to get that Robo Alesta back into my collection. And then I went on eBay to look for one, and I said, that's not going to happen for a while because it was really expensive. Then I found a guy on Facebook that was selling it, and I got this for, I think, half what I was going for on Facebook. But you can see why. The case is jacked up beyond belief. It is cracked as all hell. But now there's replacement ones I can buy, which makes this not so bad. But it's a fantastic game. Dungeon Explorer on Sega CD is a great game. No, I do not have Dungeon Explorer. I haven't bought any Sega CD stuff in a long time. I want to say the last thing I bought for Sega CD was that Power Rangers game. And I found that at a half-price books randomly. Sylphid. This was one of the other shmups that I actually liked because this was different. Kind of like Star Fox, it was all about the polygons. And polygons were a new thing back in the day. And not a lot of games used them because when we were using it on a cartridge like Star Fox, it takes up so much power. The game is so slow. This was the opposite. But it's kind of like from this angle, like this, I don't want to say isometric, like three-quarters view or whatever. You're kind of like angled going into the screen, and things are coming down the screen at you. So it's kind of like a vertically scrolling shmup, but just angled a little bit differently. But a lot of fun. I like this one a lot. It is different. The graphics are pretty cool. The environments you fly through are really rad, and the music is cool too. And there's really neat cutscenes that are done in-game, which I think are fantastic. There's a sequel for that. I do believe it's a sequel for the PlayStation 2, and it was made by Treasure. Get on that. Everyone had this one for the Sega CD. You couldn't avoid it. Sonic CD. I like this one a lot, but it's just a copy that I have. I got from a friend of mine on eBay. Or not eBay, a friend of mine on Facebook. And the thing was, he didn't tell me that it looked like somebody took some sandpaper to this damn disc. I don't know if you can see it at all. But when it showed up, I looked at the disc and I was like, what the hell? So I contacted him, like, dude, what did you sell me this thing for? I seriously doubt this thing is going to run. He's like, well, it ran okay when I tested it. I was like, uh-huh. And it works. But it does skip around. At least the music skips around a little bit while you're playing it. So I needed to get it resurfaced, but no one does that around me anymore since all those game stores I used to go to closed. But it's your typical Sonic game, but there's like, the future and the past, and you can like time travel in this one. And there's also like 3D levels where you're going into the screen and stuff like that. It's cool. I would just rather play Sonic Mania. But Sonic CD, at the time that came out, was my favorite Sonic game of all time. Part 2 was my favorite until that came out. Then that took over my life for a little while. And then I kind of started getting sick of Sonic after that. Then we got Stellar Fire. This is another tank game, but it's more sci-fi-y. You're on alien planets, and everything is polygons, and it's kind of craptastic. There's a sequel to this for the 3DO, which is a lot better. And for some reason, was it Michael Dorn is a voice in that one? Yeah, he's in this one too. Introduction, narrated by Michael Dorn. Star Trek, they put... that's funny. I never noticed that. On the back, it says, Introduction, narrated by Michael Dorn. Star Trek The New Generation's Lieutenant Worf. The New Generation. Somebody didn't do their homework. Fired. It's okay. This one I had no intention of buying until Mark from Classic Game Room talked about it in one of his videos, and I was like, that is like So goddamn cheesy. I need it in my life. And I think there's a Sega CD slash 32X version of this. And if I ever get a 32X, I might actually upgrade it because this game is so awesome. It's called Surgical Strike. It's another full motion video game. This one's all about shooting gallery type things. But the storyline, the movie in the game, stars the dude who was the lead on Stargate Atlantis. What's his name? Joe Flanagan. And he is really bad in this. And it is so much fun because I think he knows that he's like, I'm acting in a freaking video game. Where has my career gone? And you can tell he's just like not happy. And it makes the game even better because the game is cheesy enough as it is. I mean, it is a video game for crying out loud, but it's like his craptastic acting just makes the whole thing worthwhile. And that's exactly kind of what Mark was talking about in his video. And I was like, I think I need that in my life. And it's really good. So I never played this back in the day, but now this is probably my second favorite full motion video game next to Ground Zero Texas. And then, like, I was talking about how much I love the Terminator for the Genesis, but we got the Terminator for the Sega CD. Now, this is a freaking game. Not to say that Genesis one was bad. That Genesis game is awesome. This is better. The music is by Tommy freaking Tallarico, and it's like this awesome rock music. The graphics are fantastic. The gameplay is great. It's faster than the Genesis game. There's more levels, thankfully. And a lot of it actually takes place in the apocalyptic future. This game is awesome. I just popped in Terminator on my Mega Drive there. That game is fantastic, but this one's better. This was the game that made me want to get a Sega CD. I bought an issue of this video game magazine called Die Hard Gamer or Die Hard Gaming or something like that. Die Hard Game Club. And this was the cover story. And I was like, ooh, there's a new Terminator game coming out. What is this? So I look at it, I'm like, what is this Sega CD thing? I'm like, what is that? Because the Sega CD hadn't come out yet. And I was reading the article and the pictures they were showing, I was like, oh, I need this in my life, like right now. And I needed to get this. This was probably the third game I bought for the Sega CD when I got it. And it is fantastic, and I think it still holds up. It's still one of my favorite Sega CD games. And the last game in my collection should make sense. I talk about this series enough. And that's Wing Commander. I love Wing Commander. It's like the first like outer space pilot, like flight simulator type game, an outer space flight simulator game that I actually liked. I played it at a friend's house on the PC, and I fell in love with it, and I was like, I needed it. I needed it in my life. I'll talk about it more when I get to my Super Nintendo games in a couple of videos. But I had it for the Super Nintendo, and then I had a bad thing happen, and I was like, that game. But Sega CD, when I saw that it was coming out for the Sega CD, I absolutely had to have it. And this is essentially like the PC version on disc. It's great. It has voice acting and everything. Plays great. Looks great. Same great story. Cheesy as hell nowadays. I mean, to be completely honest. I mean, I don't look at everything through rose-tinted glasses. But you want to talk about those Electronic Arts games for the Genesis having massive manuals? Look at this shit. This is a Sega CD game, people. Look at that. And it's because of all the crazy control combinations you need to use in order to do things in this game, because you were normally using a keyboard to play this on the PC. You had however many keys are on a keyboard to do whatever you want. Here, it's like weird-ass combinations. It even says so on the back here. It's like a little quick reference card. You have to press, like, S and down or S and up. S, A, and B to toggle your missiles cameras. You can follow your missiles when you fire them. S, B, and C to eject. It's crazy. But it's a great version of this game that's only been one-upped by one coming for the 3DO. Woo! My throat is... It wants to choke me out. My throat wants to choke me out. What was weird? What was weird, dude? Talk to me. Tell me something. Oh, not the last game. It was also Soul Feast. This was the pack-in game that came with the Model 2 Sega CD, I think. Or maybe the Model 1. I remember when I got my Sega CD, I got the one that popped open, not the one that had the drawer. And I think this came with it. I just picked this up on eBay, like when I first got my Sega CDX. I was like, oh yeah, that Soul Feast game. I remember I had that back in the day. I want that. I got this for like $5. But it's a shmup. It's a horizontally scrolling shmup. I think it's a sequel to Soul Dees. that came out on the Genesis, which was okay. This one's better, but it's just it's kind of a generic shmup. It's not that great. And that's it for the Sega CD. My throat is going absolutely crazy. Like I said, I'm getting over a really bad cold. Still kind of clogged, and talking for almost 2 hours is not doing my throat any favors. So I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for sticking around and watching me talk about Genesis and Sega CD games for almost 2 hours tonight. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I love talking to everybody that's in the chat and everything. Jason and Power Metal Gamer and Old Dirty Gamer and Mish Kebab. Everybody that came by. Thank you very much. I'll be back next Thursday for another video game collection live stream. That's going to be all about the Game Boy. That one will probably be pretty short, unless I combine it with something else. Maybe the Game Boy Color. We'll see. Because the one after that is going to be all about my Super Nintendo, and that's probably going to have to be split into 2 videos as well because of the amount of Super Nintendo games I'm looking at right now. I have a problem, people. I'm an addict. Do I need to go to AA? I'm an addict. I buy way too many video games. God, I got a problem. Okay, but so next Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, I'm going to be doing the Game Boy and probably Game Boy Color video. And then I want to say next week I'm going to release the 4th episode in the Movies That Would Make Great Video Games collaboration. And it's going to be fantastic. I got a lot of really cool up-and-coming YouTubers to participate. I'm really happy about where it's going. I'm almost done. I'm almost done editing it. Kid Punk. My throat's killing me. Oh my god. So keep an eye out for that. If Jason can start making Top 3 Tuesday videos again, I'll get back into doing those. But until then, I'm probably not going to be making any because it's not as much fun without Jason doing the little tag team thing we're doing. But stay tuned. I got more Diamond in the Rough videos planned. I got one for the NES coming up next, followed by one for the Super Nintendo. So keep an eye out for those. And there's even one for the Saturn coming. Maybe. Shh, don't tell anyone. So keep an eye out for those. So I'll see you guys next Thursday if you decide to come back and watch me talk about some Game Boy stuff. So thank you very much for sticking around for almost 2 hours watching my fat ass talk about video games. So I'll talk to you later. Have a great night. Old Ass Retro Gamer out.